everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Roy Kennedy.
I'm Z Garcia.
And today we're talking about a game that both surprised me and did not surprise me at the same time when they announced it.
Okay.
Star Wars, the deck building game. I was like, oh, doesn't that exist?
We don't have one yet.
No, it doesn't exist. Fantasy Flight's doing it. Didn't they already do it? Living card game?
They did a living card game.
Doesn't Fantasy Flight only have like miniatures game license? I guess these are miniature.
No, they have
flats.
card game too, I think.
Definitely.
It was confusing, but then I was like, oh, Star Wars deck building game. And I have to say, when I finally got it, I thought it would be in a bigger box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you expecting something different?
I was expecting it to be a deck building game that was 2 players. I didn't know, and I knew that there was a force thing going back and forth, but I didn't know much more than that.
Yeah, okay, well, Roy's going to show you how to play it, and we'll be right back.
All right, so let's take a look at the Star Wars deck building game. So basically this follows the mode of most deck building games where you draw a hand of 5 cards, you have a deck of 10 cards that you start with, and you start with very basic cards and you build up your cards as the game goes along. This is all very Star Wars themed and lots of thematic stuff going on there. Let's talk about the point of the game. The point of the game is to destroy 3 of your opponent's bases. So you start with a base. You have a base here that just says start the game with this base in play. Tatooine for the Rebels here, Lolth for the Empire, and both of these bases have 8 hit points for the starting base. Basically, if you knock that out, then they will be able to choose another base out of the deck here, and this will have like a little bit of a catch-up mechanic as you reveal it, and then it'll kind of go on, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. But yeah, so basically what you're going to do is you have your hand of 5 cards that you've drawn here, and then you can kind of play these cards out. So as you play them out, we have an icon here for the resources you get, so we'll get 4 of those. And then you have an icon here for combat, and combat is used for attacking the opposing rebel base, of course the point of the game, and also for attacking enemy cards in the row here. So there will be several cards out here, like, well, the TIE fighter should be facing the other direction. So this is a unique thing in deck building where with this specific game is the fact that you can only recruit stuff of your faction. So as the rebel player here, I can only recruit the Snowspeeder or the Millennium Falcon. I can also recruit neutral cards, which will be the Nebulon Frigate here and Lobot. The cost to recruit the cards is in the corner here, all very standard deck building stuff, so I'd have to have at least 2 resources to get this card. So if I played these out, I would have 4. And then you basically kind of exhaust these cards to spend them to gain what you need here. So I could spend 2 to gain the Snowspeeder. Whenever you get a card, it will go into your discard pile to be shuffled back in as your deck runs out. And then we would immediately replace the card here. And here we have Jabba the Hutt, another neutral card. It costs 8, and either player could get them. The Snowspeeder here is cool because it'll give me 2 more attack, and if my opponent has to discard a card from their hand. Also, if you note with these cards, if the Empire player could have done attacking it, they could attack it in the middle with combat, and they would exile a card from their hand or discard pile. So each of the faction-specific card has different stuff that happens for different players, whether you're recruiting it and bringing it to your team, or whether you're actually knocking it out, sabotaging it, or doing a bounty hunt on it. So my Rebel Trooper here can do 2 damage. It could attack this TIE fighter, then giving me another reward. So whenever you gain the resources here, you kind of have these cubes off to the side for damage and resources. You're able to gain one of those, so this would be knocked out of the game. And then I would have 3 here. I could go ahead and recruit the Lobot, which is a neutral card that says when you play him, you can choose whether to gain attack, gain resources, or gain the force. So we haven't talked much about the force board here, but of course these will all completely fill up as soon as they happen. The force board over here, basically what it does is you can pull the force, and if the force is ever across the line, the force is with you. So you have this board, and it'll start in the middle. If it goes this way, it's with the Rebellion. If it goes this way, it's with the Empire. If you pull it all the way to your side, you're going to get 1 extra resource to recruit things with. I know there's probably different terminology for it, but that makes it simple for me because I've played so many different deck building games, and they all have the terms slightly different on them. But yeah, so then you would discard all of your cards that you've used, and then you would draw your hand of 5 new cards. And you're going to have a lot of basic cards in your hand as the game begins. The thing is, a lot of times you're also trying to use your attack to attack the enemy base. If you get 8 damage over there or get enough damage on the base, depending on the hit points of the specific base that you're on currently, you will knock it out. Also, if somebody has a a capital ship in play, you have to take out that capital ship before you could take out their base. So getting a bunch of capital ships will help you protect your base, therefore keeping you from losing the game. These capital ships can also have abilities that will trigger when you put them into play or when you choose to use them. They can also have recruitment and combat on the side there as well. This one says repair 3 damage from your base or gain 3 resources. So that's awesome to be able to get more stuff. So you'll have all sorts of different things like that as well. But yeah, you're basically going back and forth trying to take out each other's bases. When a base is knocked out, so say the Empire did 8 damage to this would go off to the side. They can no longer knock out another base that same turn. So there'll be no base for them to knock out for the remainder of that turn. But then when it's my turn, I will choose one of these to put up at the beginning of my turn. And they have all sorts of different really cool things on it. So it could be when you reveal this, you gain 4 force. So that's awesome if you have a lot of cards that affect having the force being with you. This one says when you reveal Dagobah, exile 3 cards from your hand or discard pile. I love this because culling your deck and getting rid of cards, trashing cards out of your deck is amazing in deck building. This is one of my favorite cards to take, and there's one of these cards as well in the Empire side. Culling the deck is amazing. And then Hoth here, while Hoth is your base, prevent the first 2 damage dealt to Hoth each turn. And it has 14 hit points, so you could end up slowing your opponent down a ton. If you want to really stall them out on being able to take out your base, maybe this is the 3rd one you have, and it's like, well, you really are not going to be able to beat me through this one. This one says, if this base was added, your first neutral card purchased each turn to your hand, you must exile that card at the end of your turn. Wow, that's awesome. So you get to get neutral cards. This one says when your opponent discards a card from their hand during your turn, you deal 2 damage to their base. So if you have a lot of the rebel stuff can make your opponent discard cards, so you could deal damage by kind of doing these different sabotage runs. When this is your base, place the first card you purchased each turn on the top of your deck. So you know cards you purchased or you're going to get immediately. Tatooine, when you reveal Tatooine, swap a card from the Galaxy row with a rebel card from the Galaxy discard pile and gain 1 resource. So that's awesome. So you can get something out of the discard pile if there's something that they took out. Lots of cool stuff, lots of cool bases, and of course the Empire bases have lots of cool stuff. One that I specifically want to show you is the Death Star here. The Death Star, you can spend 4 resources to destroy a capital ship your opponent has in play or a capital ship in the Galaxy row. So Death Star blasting capital ships away. Really useful and really cool stuff there, and adds a cool catch-up mechanic when your base gets destroyed, being able to reveal one of those new bases. So I'm going to look through some of the characters here. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You're just trying to fight and knock out your opponents on stuff. So you have lots of different cool capital ships, blockade runners, lots of cool different ships. I love these because if your opponent has a capital ship, you get to draw a card and it's 2 combat, so it kind of replaces itself in your hand. Lots of really cool comboing you can do. A lot of stuff combos off of whether you have force in play, whether you have a capital ship in play. This one says each of your capital ships gains extra strength. This one says if you have a troop or a vehicle, you get to draw a card. So there's a lot of comboing off of different card types. If you look in the middle of the card here, this is a fighter. So if you have a capital ship, you get to draw a card with a TIE fighter. So you can check, and there's a lot of bounty hunter comboing as well. So this unit gains 2 attack while attacking in the Galaxy row, because everybody knows that this guy shot first, or actually Han shot first. I said that backwards. But yeah, lots of cool cards there. Han Solo as well. Draw a card, 2 instead if you have the Millennium Falcon in play. And of course, you can see their strength in the corner. There's lots of really cool ships that have lots of strength that you can be blasting away capital ships or trying to take out the bases. And you have the juxtaposition of whether you're going to be taking out enemy cards in the row here or going straight for their base or attacking capital ships that are blocking their base. You have all these different decisions you make as you play the game. So pretty straightforward deck building game. Nothing too out of the mold here, but yet I can give you a taste of how it works. I love the artwork on this. Lots of amazing art. You have your Chewbacca's and all of your different stuff. But yeah, that is the Star Wars deck building game.
So I said, when I first read the rules of this feels like it was the first card game designed by AI.
And I said, I know the designer, so that would be weird if Caleb's a robot.
Okay. Yes, but it does feel some people watch this and that's just like Star Realms.
Yeah.
Or that's that's the biggest one. It's like but it has other things like from different games and stuff in it, and there's not particularly anything.
It's not going to make the innovative list for next year.
It's not about innovation, it's about iteration. Absolutely, absolutely. That's where this lands. And which is fine. I think, again, I don't think the audience that is seeking this out as necessarily seeking it out because I heard about this really innovative deck building game. No,
Right,
they're looking
yeah.
for a Star Wars deck building game.
Right. And when you have a cash cow IP, it's almost better to not like
Rock
do
the
something
boat.
completely experimental.
I agree.
That being said, I think the card alliance system in the market, that's new. I don't know.
Well, it's a little.
Tom said it's been in other games before. I haven't played other games
Transformers,
with that
G.I.
before.
Joe, Power Rangers, not G.I. Joe, sorry, Transformer, Power Rangers, well, Power Rangers for sure,
Okay.
has that in it.
Sorry, my eyes glossed over as soon as you mentioned the Transformers deck building game.
Okay, but I think it's been in some of the Renegade ones.
Okay.
The thing here that I thought was very unique was the base selection.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And it's kind of like a catch-up mechanic as well.
Yeah, I do like that. The idea that you get to pick what's next. There's been games like this where you have, like, say, 3 bases or what have you, right? And then you're trying to defend those, put stuff in front of this one. Oh, no, you're attacking me over here, block that one. Having a single location that is where you're targeted, that you block, and when that goes, you pick based on your stage of the game, where you're at, what you want next. That feels great. There's a nice amount of strategy there, you know? I was playing with you, and when it came my turn to pick one, I'm like, I have a bunch of whatever they're called, soldiers in my deck.
Right.
This would be great. Boom. Now all my cards, and most of them, are better. Just immediately are all +1 attack or whatever. That's great.
Another cool thing about the bases is it's extremely situational in the current game state and your opponent as well. Like,
Yeah.
I played against Chris and he was recruiting a ton of capital ships. So I'm like, I need the Death Star to blow up his capital ships. But if he didn't have as many, that card wouldn't be nearly as good. Or like maybe there's there's ones that give you like free cards out of the row, which could be terrible if it's not something good there currently.
Yeah.
But there's an amazing expensive card. It's like, I'm taking this base this time, you know?
Yeah,
It just
or
mixes it up. It makes it interesting.
Buying from the discard pile also. There's a few cards
Yeah.
that let you do that. Incredibly powerful, especially if your opponent keeps throwing things away, you know?
And then the other thing with that is that I love that this is an innovation. We've seen games where sometimes you level up, or you get destroyed, you go to level 2, you go to stage 2, you're a little bit stronger. But like you said, this one puts the definition of stronger in your control. You get to choose what that is. I think that's once again not completely out of nowhere, but a good innovation on something, and probably one of my favorite iterations of that type of a thing.
So let's talk about theme. All of us here like Star Wars to some degree.
Right.
Some people more than others.
Oh, I didn't wear my Star Wars shirt today. Darn.
It's not a Star Wars shirt?
I only own 3 shirts.
The Star Wars that I like is this Star Wars. Like, I really like the original trilogy stuff, and this is just chocked full of that stuff. So it's like, oh man, it's very nostalgic as far as that stuff goes.
Sure, but there's a couple things with theme. First of all, do you feel the theme at all?
I mean, as much as you do in any deck building game where you're drawing cards and throwing them down.
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's it. As far as deck building games, which are not the most thematic type of games, yeah, I feel it. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting for the cards to get flipped and bam, there's Darth Vader. Is that exciting? I think so.
Of course, Darth Vader has a lot to do with the Force and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes a little bit of sense.
Okay, there's in my mind only a few cards that really, like, as individual cards, feel kind of thematic.
Right.
Like, Darth Vader has to do with Force. Good. Jabba the Hutt. You have to trash cards to use him.
His barge lets you pull out bounty hunters out of your discard pile and play them again, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like, so some cards are like, oh, I have to trash cards to use his really good ability. That's nice early, but later on, like, do I want to still be working with this mobster kind of guy? But a lot of the cards are just kind of like X-Wing, 2 damage, draw a card. TIE Fighter, 2 damage, draw a card. Some of them
Hey,
are
but
just
if you have a capital ship,
fine.
you get to draw a card.
But I feel like almost the structure of the game, rather than individual cards being thematic, I feel like the structure of the game is more thematic than your average, like, Transformers, the deck building game, XYZ IP, the deck building game. I like the hidden bases. I like the different alliances of the cards in the market. I'm going to attack that thing. I'm going to attack Admiral Priet before he becomes available for you, the Empire player, to get him. I'm going to do a sabotage mission. Like, it's more like structurally thematic to me than individual moments of it.
I really do like that whole, there's a little sliver of the card that even if it's your card, it's for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it reminds me a little bit of Ascension, in which this is not the same thing, but in Ascension where you have a flop of cards, some you buy, but some you attack. You can't buy those cards, you can attack them. It's a similar thing, except in this game, I can attack some cards and buy some, and flip-flop that for the other player.
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting.
All right, so then let me bring it to my second question is,
Yes.
you're playing light side, or the light side against dark side, or whatever they're
Yeah.
called. How asymmetrical do you think it is?
It's interesting because I feel like the Rebellion is very much like forcing your opponent to discard cards and doing these sabotage run type things. And the Empire is more about like building up fleets of things and having a bunch of the same thing and like, okay, this TIE Fighter lets me draw another card, and this TIE Fighter lets me draw another card. It has a little bit more of the card draw like combos. So they're a little bit different. But if you draft a whole bunch of neutral cards, you're going to be the same no matter which side you play.
Interesting. I didn't look that closely, to be fair. I didn't go through all the cards. I didn't feel a difference.
That's where I'm at.
They're more similar. I was taking a look at it. They're more
Yeah, they're
similar
not
than
too
you might think. But Roy's right. The light side is more about. If you look at all the total power, the dark side I think has more.
Right.
Okay.
And bigger things. They definitely have bigger capital ships to protect. But the light side has more ways of blowing things up.
Makes sense, yeah.
But don't get too caught up in that. And that brings me to the last thing about the theme. Not everything's in the set.
Right.
So you have the two bigs, Darth Vader and Luke, and then the characters surrounding them.
Sure, Han Solo, Chewbacca,
But I
the
don't
Princess
think,
Leia. Yeah.
I mean, I might have missed it, but I don't think Yoda's in the set, or Emperor Palpatine.
Right.
Babu Freak.
Babu Freak.
There's no Mandalorian stuff in here.
Hey!
There's also not a ton of stuff from the third movie, Return of the Jedi. There's a little bit. There's Jabba the Hutt and stuff. So it definitely feels like they held a few big ones back for a nice expansion.
Sure.
No.
But would you guys care if this wasn't expanded? Is it good base? Because we often talk about that.
Oh,
This is fun, but I would like an expansion.
I think it's got a good amount of replayability right out of the box. I do. Again, this is not a game I'm going to play every day for the following year, but it did not feel like I could immediately poke holes in fun things to do, to me anyway.
Right.
Will there be an expansion? Probably. Am I going to enjoy it? Probably. But I also thought, man, this deck of bases, hidden bases, is going to let me play this in a lot of different ways where I can push, get more neutral cards in my deck, not ignore those entirely, do this other thing, and then put this one into play, which makes whatever I'm working on better. That's replayability above and beyond the central deck of cards.
Yes.
I actually really enjoy how compact the whole thing is in some ways, because it seems like a kind of game you throw in your backpack, and it's like, oh, you're with another person, you're like, oh, want to play the Star Wars deck building game, like real quick, like something you can pull out like over lunch or something like that, like, oh, work lunch break or whatever, let's play Star Wars deck building game. And like this, with the IP on it, someone who you know is a Star Wars fan, and deck building is one of those things that's decently accessible to people once they get the concepts around it. It just seems like a great game to bring out for all sorts of different players.
Very accessible.
I feel like for a smaller package, because this is smaller than I was expecting, I like the amount of choices you have on a turn. I have 6 attack power this turn. Cool. Do I attack you?
base?
Do I blow up your thing in the middle of it? Do I try to damage out several of your ships? Or do I just take out this card because it gives me a great bonus and is going to let me build up? The problem I have with a lot of deck building games that have the multiple types of currency is when there's a flop out in the middle and you're like, well,
I don't need any of this.
I don't need any of it. But there's always something interesting to do if you have a lot of purchasing power or a lot of attacking. So I think it's a bit more robust than it almost seems or than it feels.
Did you guys have a problem? This is something I'm not sure where I come down on this one. That deck of cards for the middle is shuffled. It's fully random. Did you guys have a problem at all with the flop being very much heavily towards one player or the other?
I think you could come into that problem if you get a whole lot of recruitment in the game and then don't have anything to recruit. But if you keep up with a lot of attacking cards, even if they're not your cards, you're still going to be able to do something against them. And so,
Well, the opposite might be true, I guess.
if they're all yours and you don't have enough recruitment.
Yeah, right. So I just wondered. I think my one issue with the game, and it's a minor issue, that sounds bigger than I mean it to, is that. I think the fact that that deck is mixed.
They do have some bases that are legitimately like, hey, if there are these kinds of cards out there, like I think there's an Empire one or something like get rid of every single Rebel base out there, deal 2 damage to their base for each one that's there, and discard all of those Rebel cards.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, like wipes it all out, just does a whole bunch of damage to their base that they weren't expecting because ignores capital ships, you know. So you can have like a bomb turn or just blowing their stuff up, getting rid of all the cards, putting out a bunch of new stuff, which is hopefully Empire stuff, you know. There's a bunch of interesting stuff that can happen with the game.
So what would you give this, Chris?
Score-wise, I'm going to come down on a 7.5. I think that it's really good, small, fun, compact game. It does feel small at the same time, but it does feel like there's a good amount of choices that you have within there. My biggest thing, and maybe as I play this more, the score could go up inevitably, right, is that I feel like the middle part of the game feels a little bit, I do some damage, take out one of your ships, on your turn you play out some new ships, heal your base. Do some, you know what I mean? It becomes a little bit tit for tat where I destroy some ships, I can't destroy your base yet, you put out new ships, and the same thing happens back and forth. At some point, you're going to break out of that trajectory, and you'll start being able to do bigger damage, and it's going to bleed over into the bases. There's that middle part of the game that feels a little bit samey as you're just kind of getting through that. If I could get through that part quicker and just get to the excitement of the last part, I think this game could go up. So
that's interesting. You stabilize in the middle a little bit.
Yeah, it ramps up, stabilizes for I think a little bit too long, and then goes up. And when I say a little bit too long, 7.5 is a very good score. I like this. I'm looking forward to playing more of it, and maybe we'll see ways to get past that. Yeah, I'm sure someone's saying like, "You fool!" You know,
Death Star.
Right. But yeah, 7.5 for me, a very good score. I'm happy with this package.
Yeah.
I like it. The only thing I don't like is they should have included 5-point damage counters. Because trying to count 13 damage on your base is a pain in the neck.
This is the company that gave you 2 dice for Eldritch Horror, Tom.
I get that, right? There's a lot of this I enjoy. The comparisons to Star Realms are going to be vast because they're there.
They're obvious, yeah.
Star Realms has that same thing that you just mentioned, that whole middle thing we go back and forth.
Yeah.
And the game is very balanced. Almost to a fault. Almost like you're not, I mean, maybe, again, I might be wrong here, but like, oh, I can crush somebody. I don't think you can. Because of the way those bases come back in, you're like, oh, ha, ha, well, you were doing this, and now I just took something that completely hurts your strategy, or helps me. But I don't mind that. I think it's fine. I'm just saying if you're looking there for like this really cool outside the thing strategy, that stuff's very counterable in this game. But it does do Star Wars well, and it's more streamlined than almost any other Star Wars game on the market.
Yes, it's incredibly accessible.
And that includes the Ancient Company, the Star Wars trading card game, the living card game, and the Star Wars dice game. This does it fast, quick, and I went into this with almost, not negative, but like, show me something new in Star Wars. And it worked well for me, really well. I would like to see a little bit more in the future, and that might make my rating go up, but it's a solid 8 for me at this point.
That's where I'm coming down as well. I thought you were going to be higher than 8 the way you were talking.
Well, because it's some of those things, I don't know if I'll be playing this all the time, because I've seen a lot of it, and yes, I get don't get me wrong, I don't need expansions and everything.
Right.
But and it is portable, although not as portable as Star Realms was in that little box, but I'm just saying it's
big box.
That I don't know, but 8's good. I like it a lot.
8 is good. I'm also giving it an 8. Like I said, I think it's you're right that it was. I very much was not looking forward to this. Star Wars, the deck building game in this day and age. Could you come up with anything more boring? You know what I mean? It just seems. Again, these are the guys who put out Outer Rim and da-da-da and this and that. So Star Wars, the deck building game, didn't sound exciting. But I agree with you. If you're looking for a Star Wars game to either buy yourself or gift to someone, and you want a simple to get into one, you don't want a 4-hour affair or a rules-heavy one. This is a slam dunk for that audience. And I mean, yeah, they'll come out with extra stuff, like I said, and I'll like it, but this is solid. It's a great compact box. To be fair, you also can't fit a whole lot else in this box, so especially if you sleeve it. So
it all fits sleeved. That's like the perfect size.
But that's it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, a solid 8 out of 10. Really glad I played it, and color me surprised because I really enjoyed it.
For me, it's going to be an 8.5. I really enjoyed this game. Like, I just really enjoy the meaningful decisions. Like, each turn, it's like there's a lot of things to do and on what's going on the road, which things you're going to play. And it's kind of interesting that it's one of those deck building games where you play cards out, but then you choose which kind of cards you're exhausting and where your attacks are going. So it adds more decision in that fact as well. And I really enjoy Star Wars. I played this several times with Ruthie, and I've really enjoyed it. Like, I'm going to buy a copy of this game, and the fact that it's going to be right there, I could just borrow it, but I want my own copy of this, like, as a testament to how much I enjoy this game. I really enjoy it. I had a blast with it, and I think it's one that you're going to be able to throw on the table easily when you want to have, you're going to play with another player. I can see myself playing this a ton with Ruthie, so I'm going to have a blast with it. So that's my opinion of the game.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Star Wars Deck Building Game. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Roy Kennedy.
I'm Z Garcia.
May the Force be with you.
And with you.
Ha ha!